The church stood silent beneath the weight of its own history. Faint candlelight trembled against the stone walls, throwing long shadows that seemed to whisper prayers of their own. In the corner, beneath a wooden cross worn smooth by time, knelt a man in his 30s, Ethan. His suit was rumpled, his face pale, as if guilt itself had drained the color from his skin. Every slow breath he took echoed softly in the stillness. He pressed his hands together, eyes closed, and spoke, his voice breaking the silence like a confession tearing through years of restraint. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. But this time, I don't know if I deserve forgiveness." From behind the wooden lattice of the confession booth, Father Michael froze. That voice, trembling, familiar, dragged him back to a time he had prayed to forget. His hands tightened around his rosary. Ethan continued, his tone low, remorseful. The air between them thickened with something neither had spoken of in years, the past. Outside, the wind pressed against the stained glass as if heaven itself listened in on uneasy silence. Father Michael's breath caught. He knew the man behind the screen, the boy he once guided, the son of a friend he had buried with his own hands. And in that quiet, heavy space, forgiveness and guilt sat side by side, waiting to see who would speak first. Years earlier, the world around Ethan was brighter, softer, kinder. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window of their modest home, glinting off their mother's laughter as she packed his lunch. His father, a man of discipline and gentle pride, adjusted his tie in the mirror before heading to work. "Work hard, son, but never forget to be good," he'd say, patting Ethan's shoulder. Ethan was everything a parent could hope for, sharp-minded, kind-hearted, a dreamer who saw the best in everyone. At school, he helped classmates who struggled. At home, he made his mother smile with simple acts of love, washing dishes, fixing things, listening to her stories. Every Sunday, they walked together to church. That's where Father Michael entered the picture, a patient, wise man whose calm presence filled the room like quiet music. He saw something special in Ethan, not just intelligence, but conscience. "You have a good heart," he'd often say. "Protect it, even when the world tries to harden it." One afternoon after Mass, Father Michael shared words that would echo through Ethan's life. "A strong heart can forgive. A weak one never forgets." Ethan had smiled then, not realizing those words would one day define him. Their lives felt complete, dinners filled with laughter, prayers whispered together at night, the warmth of love untouched by betrayal. In those moments, Ethan believed goodness was unshakable, that truth always prevailed. But time, like a storm, was already gathering beyond the horizon, ready to test just how strong a good heart could be. The calm that once filled Ethan's home shattered like glass the day the headlines hit. Local official under investigation for corruption. His father's name stood bold in black ink, the kind of ink that stains reputations forever. Neighbors whispered, friends avoided eye contact. The warmth that once surrounded their family was replaced by cold judgment and silence. Ethan, barely out of his teens, felt the sting of humiliation burn through him. At school, classmates snickered behind his back. At church, pity filled the eyes that once looked at him with admiration. And in the shadows stood Daniel, his father's cunning rival, wearing sympathy like a mask. "I'm sorry, Ethan," Daniel said softly.
I tried to warn your father, but greed blinds even good men. The seed of doubt took root. That night, Ethan stormed into the living room where his father sat quietly, paperwork scattered across the table. "How could you?" you shouted. "You lied to everyone, to me. You taught me to be honest, and you're nothing but a fraud." His father looked up, wounded but calm. "Son, not every truth is seen by the world. Sometimes you must stand alone in faith." But Ethan's anger drowned reason. His final words cut deep. "I'll never forgive you." His father's eyes dimmed with sorrow. He said softly, "One day truth will come for you, my son, and I hope you'll forgive yourself." Days later, Ethan came home to flashing ambulance lights and his mother's cries. His father was gone. A heart attack, they said. In the heavy silence that followed, Ethan's voice cracked under guilt. The last words he gave his father was not love, but hate. Back in the dim confession room, the silence felt heavier than the years that had passed. Ethan sat motionless, his face hidden behind the wooden screen, the soft glow of candlelight outlining the deep lines carved by regret. The faint scent of incense hung in the air, mingling with his
shallow breaths. He tried to speak, but his voice trembled, caught somewhere between shame and exhaustion. Father Michael watched through the small lattice, his fingers resting lightly on the rosary. The stillness stretched until finally, in a low, uneven voice, he asked, "Why now, after all these years, Ethan?" Ethan's lips quivered. He lowered his head, his hands shaking as they gripped the edge of the bench. "Because I found the truth," he whispered, "and it destroyed me." The priest's breath faltered. The weight of those words filled the room like a confession before judgment. The ticking of the old clock echoed, marking each second of unspoken pain. Ethan's voice cracked again. "All this time I blamed him, hated him. I thought I was the victim, but I wasn't. I was the executioner." Father Michael closed his eyes. Decades of silence, guilt, and unanswered prayers now stood before him in human form. The candles flickered as if the air itself grew uneasy, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort, but condemns. And for Ethan, that silence was louder than any forgiveness he could ever hope to hear. It happens by accident, a dusty box buried deep in the attic, untouched for years. Ethan had come home to help his aging mother pack as she decided to move. As he opened the box, the scent of old paper filled the air, faded letters, official documents, and reports sealed with government stamps. His fingers trembled as he scanned them, line after line, signature after signature, all leading to one truth that hit him like a blade. His father was innocent. Every accusation, every piece of evidence had been fabricated. At the bottom of the stack was a contract signed by none other than Daniel, the same man who once comforted Ethan, who whispered sympathy into his wounded heart. The betrayal cut deep. His chest tightened as he read his father's final letter, never sent, a quiet plea for forgiveness and faith. Years of guilt twisted into rage. Ethan's hands clenched. The man he had trusted had destroyed not only his father's name, but his entire family's peace. That night, Ethan stood outside Daniel's towering office building, a fortress of glass and greed. Inside, Daniel sat behind a polished desk, older now, confident, untouchable. When Ethan entered, he smirked as if expecting him. "Your father was weak," he said coldly. "He forgave me before he died. Maybe you should learn from him." Ethan's jaw tightened. His voice trembled as a storm brewed behind his eyes. "That night, I didn't just lose control. I lost myself." The scene darkened.
A glass shattered, a chair toppled. The camera lingered not on the violence, but on Ethan's trembling hands, his father's rosary slipping from them, beads scattering across the floor. When the noise stopped, Daniel lay bloodied but alive, gasping, terrified. Ethan stepped back, horrified at his own reflection in the glass wall. The monster grief had made of him. Without a word, he fled into the night, leaving behind the echo of his father's warning. One day, truth will come for you, my son. The air in the confession room had grown heavier, dense with the weight of truth finally spoken. Ethan's words came out trembling, each syllable cracking under the pressure of years unspoken. I destroyed him, Father, he whispered. Not just Daniel, but my father too. I killed him with my words before his heart ever gave out. Father Michael said nothing. His fingers twisted around his rosary beads, eyes lowered, face unreadable. The silence between them was sacred yet suffocating, the kind of silence that forces every sinner to hear his own echo. Ethan swallowed hard, fighting tears. He said, I thought revenge would heal me, his voice breaking, but it only made me more broken. Every time I close my eyes, I see my father and Daniel. I can't tell which of them I hate the most, or which one I became. Father Michael looked up slowly, the candlelight dancing across his weathered face. He asked, Did you pray for the man you hurt? He asked softly. Ethan shook his head. No, I wanted him to feel my pain. The priest's sigh was deep, filled with sorrow that wasn't just for Ethan, but for what life had turned him into. Then his punishment isn't from God, he said quietly. It's from yourself, and it will last until you learn to forgive, not them, but you. Ethan's breath hitched, the flickering candlelight reflected in his tears, pulsing like a heartbeat between confession and redemption. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel angry, he just felt empty. And in that emptiness, a faint whisper of hope began to stir. That night's sleep came to Ethan like a storm, restless and thick with shadows. He found himself standing once again inside the old church, the same confession booth before him, the air heavy with candle smoke and echoes of prayers long forgotten. The booth door creaked open, and there, in the dim glow, stood his father. He looked exactly as Ethan remembered, gentle eyes, steady posture, the faint sense of old cologne that once filled their home. But this time, there was no anger, no disappointment, only silence. Ethan tried to speak, but no words came. His throat tightened as guilt and love battled within him. Slowly, his father stepped forward and placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, warm, firm, forgiving. That simple touch carried everything Ethan had longed to hear: understanding, mercy, peace. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as his father's image began to fade, dissolving into the same soft light that filled the room. No words were exchanged, yet the message was clear. Forgiveness had already been given. Ethan jolted awake, breathless, tears streaming down his face. For the first time in years, his chest felt lighter. The healing had quietly begun. Rain drizzled softly outside the hospital windows, streaking the glass with silver trails that blurred the world beyond. Ethan stood in the doorway of room 412, his heart pounding against his ribs. Inside, Daniel lay frail beneath the pale glow of fluorescent light, tubes and monitors breathing life into the man who had once seemed untouchable. When Daniel's eyes flickered open, recognition cut through the haze of pain. Fear flashed first, then resentment. "You," he rasped, voice hoarse, "come to finish what you started?" Ethan stepped closer, his expression calm but burdened. "No, he said quietly, his voice trembling with truth. "I came here to say, I'm sorry, and I forgive you." Daniel blinked, disbelief carving deep lines across his face. "Forgive me?" he whispered. "I don't deserve it." Ethan's gaze softened. "Neither did my father, but he gave it anyway." For a long moment, neither man spoke. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence between them, a rhythm that felt almost human, fragile. Daniel's eyes glistened as tears escaped down the sides of his face. Ethan stepped closer, gently placing his father's rosary on the table beside the hospital bed. "He belonged to the man you destroyed," he said softly. "He prayed for peace, not punishment. I think he'd want you to have it." Daniel turned his head away, sobbing quietly, not from pain, but from the unbearable weight of mercy. As Ethan left the room, the camera lingered on their faces, one washed with tears, the other with release. In that moment, revenge had died, and forgiveness had taken its place. The old church stood quiet in the early morning light, its stained glass windows glowing softly as sunlight broke through the clouds. Ethan walked slowly down the aisle, each step echoing through the hollow space like the rhythm of a heart finally learning peace. Father Michael stood at the altar, his robes bathed in gold lights, watching the man who had once been a broken boy. Ethan stopped halfway, eyes lowered. His voice came not as a confession this time, but as a reflection, steady, calm, almost free. "I asked for forgiveness, but maybe I was never meant to receive it. Maybe I was meant to understand it." Father Michael approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've already been forgiven, Ethan. You just need to forgive yourself." Ethan nodded, a faint smile breaking through the years of sorrow. He walked to the front of the church and lit a single candle for his father. The warm glow filled the space, flickering softly, a light born not from pain, but from peace. As the flame steadied, Ethan's voice returned one last time, quiet and resolute. "Forgive me, Father, or don't, because now I finally do." The screen faded to black as emotional piano music swelled and the final words appeared. "Forgiveness is not for them. It's for the soul that dares to heal." If this story touched your heart, remember, forgiveness isn't a sign of weakness. It's the greatest act of strength a soul can offer. We all carry pain, regrets, and memories we wish we could erase. But true healing begins when we choose to forgive, not for others, but for ourselves. Like, share, and comment if you believe forgiveness has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. And don't forget to subscribe to True Car My Story for more emotional tales of life, pain, redemption, and the courage to let go.